can read it, you won't understand anything. So that's why there are many examples, stories, prefaces, etc. that bring you to the main idea. If you read the main idea, it might be clear, but it will not carry any value. It won't make any sense or details. So my master classes will have a lot of information. It is not unnecessary details. These are details without which you won't understand it. And if you don't see these details, it means that you're just not ready for those details now. You may not have enough experience at this time. The more you understand, the stronger you are, and the more you see in the fine details. To understand it, you will need these things. A very important point in this video, you will re-watch many times. And every time you do, you will see more and more details. From the very beginning of it to the very end of it. Don't forget to review this video. In the future, those who still have not guessed what Handtouch is will call it differently. They will say Handtouch is nonsense, or that they have been doing it for a long time now, and it's called like that. This is done somehow to attract attention to themselves and their master classes. Let's close our eyes to this complete nonsense. I will talk about the most important things. Despite the fact that I think I know everything, after a while something new comes up, and at the moment all that I know I will tell you. This is more than enough to work for any types of hair, fix any situation. Think, imagine, and fix everything else. Right now we will begin. Periodically, you will return to the very beginning to review this video, and you'll see new details for yourself. This will happen all the time, and everything always consists of fine details. Now, I will try to tell in detail what Handtouch is. What is its difference from AirTouch? When you choose AirTouch, you get the same effect, only it will take 2 to 3 times longer. Strand thickness in Handtouch is from 2.5 up to 5 centimeters. Later, I will tell you what thickness is better, when, how to select, and what that affects. Handtouch is an open technique, actually a way. Why a way? Because Handtouch is a balayage plus AirTouch. From AirTouch, it's just to turn on the hairdryer over the strand. All the rest is from balayage. So now let me show you step by step here. We look at a section of a strand. So it's a strand from the side. In balayage, you need to do the following. Apply the product on top so that it does not drip inside. From below, the strands and at the ends can be completely colored over. That's why we selected a consistency more dense, so that the product does not leak through. That's why the brush can't have a lot of the product, so that we don't beat it into the hair and so on. Balayage has always been the fastest technique among all existing to this day. But there are 2 huge minuses. One are the opportunities when a customer comes to us with a warm base, for example, with copper hair, and we need to make ash at the end. In balayage, we must first color everything into cool and then lighten. Why? Because inside we always leave the untouched part in the middle or the inside. So we put the product on the top layer and the bottom, regardless of how it was split. The zigzag or straight separation or a V or a W shape, or if just feathered it. The principle was not to soak the strand completely. If you soak the strand completely, there will be just a wash. There won't be an effect. So because of this, that which is left inside from the middle of the strand and higher was untouched. Because of this, if there was copper, it was left there. It goes nowhere from the inside. Plus, the thickness of the strand also had an influence on it, and still affects all techniques on the strength of lightening the hair. What is hand? This is when you are this inner layer which you can't touch in the balayage. You just blow out, isolate it, and make it easier for yourself. So in hand, you can completely soak with the exception of 10 centimeters from the roots. Here, you will do the shading. But there is one but. Sometimes, this shading leads to the fact that we have yellow stripes at the roots. I will show you and tell you why this happens and how to avoid it. Overall, hand is a simple thing. We blow out a layer and get an opportunity to color the copper if it is there, and make it ash as we turn the hair cool while lightening, while everything here. This is hand in a nutshell. What is the difference between AirTouch from hand? If in the root zone, and 10 centimeters from the scalp, only on this distance you will have to work. You will work with two different oxidizing agents for one or another reason, then only air will work. In all the other cases, hand may fit. It will completely replace air in all aspects. When will you need air in the root zone? We sometimes meet clients with some dark strip, and here we have to take the oxidizer, which is lower here, a little higher there, and here, and again a little lower. In this case, we choose only air. We are talking about the 10 centimeters from the scalp, so from the root zone. In all the rest of the cases, hand will help you, and it's practically, that is, always or very, very often. I don't think that you often meet customers with such a strip, but now you know that we should know that each technique has its own pros and cons and exceptions. In most cases, you can use hand. Each coloring begins with the rightly selected product. So here is how we select product. So we have powder for closed techniques and power for closed techniques. I always say is open techniques power is more comfortable consistency-wise than powder for closed techniques. But when you start to work powder for open techs, it's weaker. I mean, powder for open techniques is weaker in consistency, but more convenient. Powder for closed techniques is less convenient, but is stronger, but sometimes is necessary. How to tell them apart? Usually, they don't vary much visually. You will have to develop a feeling for it. The powder for closed hair techniques can swell a little when applied. The powder becomes more liquid. The powder for open techniques is more dense. The powder for closed techs is very sticky, very thin, not sticky. Even if you make the consistency right for yourself, you will feel it anyway. About the consistency. We can mix powders in any techniques from 1 to 1, from 1 to 4. The more we have of the oxidant, the weaker the product. The less of the oxidant, it's more dense and more comfortable for shading. But the more convenient it is for shading, the faster it dries up and the time for work is more limited. The powder for open techniques is more dense than it. People call it clay. Whatever. I think that in the video, you won't particularly feel the difference, but definitely, when you will be in your laboratory, you will start to mix everything. You'll understand. So that's why in open techniques, we take higher percentages. When I say that here in balayage, or in hand, I use 6, 9, 12%, people say, "My God, he is killing hair. How can he do that?" While using these percentages, you must understand two things. Number one, 9 or 12% in hand or in balayage are completely different things than to start with 9 or 12% in highlighting or AirTouch. In closed techniques, where you take a thinner strand, there is more air isolation. There, the aggression is much higher than an open technique. In the open air technique, we take significantly thicker strands. There is no complete air isolation. It is still inside there anyway, and a higher percentage works itself differently. But why can't you take the product for closed technique? Why can't you take a lower percentage, which we use in closed techniques, and use it in open ones? Because in open techniques, the product works itself for some time. I've talked about this many times before in different videos, which you can watch. The point is that when using it, the product in open techniques with dense consistency, even if this product is used for closed techniques, the powder works from 40 to 70 minutes. Because it's denser, the more liquid products works longer, but the more liquid it is, the more difficult it is. You cannot shade and keep the layer as it should be done. So during this time at a low percentage and with a very thick strand, the lightning won't happen. Therefore, you have to take high percentages, but I'll remind you that it might work out differently. They aren't as aggressive like closed technique ones. You take a high percentage in open techniques, and during its time it works. Take a low percent and it bleaches. The powder for 40, 60, 70 minutes respectively. And the lightning or bleaching is very weak, and then what's left is to clean it up, and it takes twice as much time. I hope you already knew that, because it's in all my videos. Now will appear on the screen our do that which we will work. I prepared in advance half of the scalp with the hair mask because we have a lot of it. Now, you will see in detail what awaits you, what's awaiting us, and we will immediately get to work. I have a video about charts, about separation or breakdown, how to build it right, do it well. From there, you can remember the information that separation, in open techniques, is done super easily. In closed techniques, it's preferable to go against the hair growth and a bunch of other rules concerning head shapes. In open techniques, everything is much simpler, with the usual separation, a light diagonal along the back of the head, a light diagonal next to the face, up to the part. I will come back to separation and you will get everything you need. In open techniques, you can't go into such splits or something like this, or it will lead to a stripe because you took a thick strand. If you will be placing a thick strand here, it will be unpredictable and it looks just like a very visible stripe. In the little diagonal, that is, by natural growth of hair, you can get almost any effect really, because of the separation. By applying the drawing on the strand, you will get the effect that you need due to the thickness of the strand, that's for sure. How to decide the thickness of the strand? Now, we are forced to not work with strands of such density that we love to work with. That is, strands that are 4 to 5 centimeters. Now we take 2.5, 3.5 centimeters at the most. How to determine when and what thickness of strands to take? The thicker they are, the harder they are to be blown. And the thinner the strands have to be too. With thick hair, if you take 5 centimeters, the blowing you will have will be definitively bad, and so the lightning will be poor. The thinner the strand, the better the blowout and the better the lightning. So the thicker the hair, the worse is the blowout and darker the base. Thinner the strand you have to take. If you take the thickness of the strand less than 2.5 centimeters, it won't be AirTouch. You won't be able to do any shading. Don't torture yourself. Better to do basic AirTouch. In all other cases, everything is fits. Just take the hand, 2.5 centimeters, and off we go. Since we began to talk about the blowout of AirTouch, I will tell you how to make it so that the strands are blown out. I will tell you where to hold your hands and everything else. But let's talk about preparing. The hair should be clean and straightened from the roots. If the hair is unclean, or if the hair is not straightened from the roots are a little wavy or dirty, the blowout will be much worse or just bad. And this is very important. You know perfectly well the same rule applies. The more you blow, the smoother the transition, but less blonde. Blowing out well is key. That is, the layers. What are layers? You all know that I have a video about AirTouch and in general about the layers. You all know that well. The cut matters. The creation of layers matters. You can create layers. I will show you one of two options. Just to remind you before lightning, the cut is always done first, or else you'll ruin the effect. About cascade cut, I will explain later. Clean, straightened hair means better blowout, and it means better quality of your work. If it's not blown out, Maybe you took a thicker strand, and you need to take a thinner one. If you took the strand that's very thin, like 2.5 centimeters, and you're holding on to the ends, that means you do not have enough layers, and you should try to create them if possible. When I say I need to hold on to the very ends, that means right here. So, right here. If you will hold above this line, then the blowout will be much worse. The ends are right here. Clean hair, the right thickness of the strand. If you will be holding here, then you'll have everything blown out. Don't try to immediately cut something with the scissors. I practically always have everything blown out fine. We mixed the power and the product for closed techniques a little bit more than 1 to 1.5 because 1 to 1.5, well, is too dense, too unpredictable. A little bit more than 1.5 allows me to feel the layer. But on different powders at different oxidants, everything is different. Therefore, I won't be tying you to any standards. I will only try to show why we do a certain density, what it's responsible for. And let's say you pick your own product to see what fits and what works for what you need. So the thickness of the strand we have is about 2 to 2.5 centimeters. We have everything as follows. The root zone is colored to the 6th level. The length is something like the 8th level copper gold. We will need to work here with the 6% one, here with the 3% one. Then we will increase it. The 6% we will be going a little on the light part. And here will be the 3%. In the transition zone, we will be stirring everything with each other. But still, pay attention to the fact that the higher percentage should always be going a little to the blonde. If the low percentage goes to the dark part here, there is a high probability that it will not be light enough and will have a stripe. Handtouch is broken down into two parts. The first is clean blowout. Now, I will show you how to clean blow out a strand and what is responsible for it. Thickness of the strand is 3.5 to 5 centimeters. Width of the strand should fit in our 2 phalanges before this bend. So if it goes further out, the strand is not fixated. If it's here, then we have no fixation and we have no good quality blowout. And it's uneven. The width of the strand fits in the 2 phalanges of the fingers. But if you don't have 2 long fingers, I will show you how to adjust. But for yourself, know that 6 to 8%. That's the width that you should have. The back of the head zone, we usually have a widening. And we need to break it into 3 strands. We can't have it all together. It will all be falling out. The blowout will be uneven. We'll work in 2 sections. 1, 2, 3. The back of the head zone is usually broken up into 3 sections like this. When it widens, we break it into 3 like this. A little crooked, but you get it. Slightly diagonal like this. If you know that in the back of the head zone, you need to break it into 3 sections. Pay attention to the angle of the strands. If you do it at an angle like this, the first strand will be like this. The second one like this, and the third one will be like this in the middle, and it will be thicker. It will be uneven. So don't focus so much on the angle. You can do it almost horizontally like here. This way, you don't get any triangle. In Handtouch, you have to do only 2 things really: cleanly blow out and clean application. But there are a lot of nuances here. What is the ideal blowout? You comb the strands from the roots. Your finger's 2 phalanges follow right after the comb. The strand is stretched perpendicularly to the scalp. Then, how do you do it so the strands fit in your two phalanges? Because for me, it's borderline here. You can pull it up in a certain way. You pull it up perpendicular, like me here. You put the comb in an angle like this. At first, making it more narrow. And your fingers connect with the comb. And then straighten the comb and the fingers and go towards the end. The fingers must go after the comb, not before it. You must comb right from the roots of the hair. You cannot turn on the hair dryer right in the middle, because if you do that and put it under, you shift a layer of hair at the place of the first hot hair, and the blowout is not clean. If that happened, and you have to comb it out again with your hands and do it all over again. Okay, great. Between two phalanges of your fingers, you put the hair dryer at the root zone, a little turned away from the foil or paper, whatever you're working with. And when you first turn the hair dryer, you blow the first layer. Pay attention to the shift of the layer. You cannot go in front of that. If you go straight to the roots, then everything is blown out unevenly. Let's treat this like a puzzle. You turn the blow dryer, and your first motions at the roots are these. First you clean the near root area, and then you turn the hair dryer like this. This or this is not okay. Then turn the hair dryer at such an angle away from the scalp. This way you drive the air in the direction of the hair growth, not towards the scalp. You cannot be with the blow dryer before the layer. You must be closer to the roots. You cannot be directly above it. You cannot be closer to the ends in front of it with side of the roots. And so, you slowly do it. If you do it wrong, you'll have uneven layers coming out. There will be a pit. And then you have to tear a strand and everything will be uneven. And so, you drive this layer. You come to the ends and you see that there's a bit of tangled hairs there. So, now you can turn the nozzles like this way and to clean the strand like this. If you initially nozzle this way to begin with, you will have a mess at the roots. A perfect blow looks like this. Get as close as possible. Maximum 2 centimeters from the skin. This is why we hold it perpendicular, to allow for a clean blow. This is important. If you do not have access to the roots, you need to take a thinner strand and blow it out again. Next application. I grab the strand by the ends. Originally, I was blowing between two phalanges. I grab a strand with my thumb on top. Don't twist or bunch it up, or the color will not go through. This we do to see the distance with which we are working. I take a higher percentage, and I apply it at any angle calmly in the middle of the strand. Here, the angles are not so important for me. I apply it in the middle of the strand, and now we go to application. The brush should be as clean as possible. Now I have the product in the middle strands. As you remember, in 10 to 12 centimeters from the roots, everything below that I can completely soak. In some cases a little more, but about that later. So now, about feathering. I turn the brush this way, sideways, not directly from the top and/or from the side. I gently move the product to the root. The strand is always stretched out, and I'm holding on to the ends. At some point, we see that there is not enough products. How to determine how much is needed? We'll discuss that later. But now, I take a little bit of product on the brush, put it in the middle of the strands, and from here, we spread it up toward the roots. If you take the product on the brush and immediately start going up, you will have a mess and feathering will not be done well. Here is an important rule. Application should not be done along the hair growth in all techniques. And feathering application should be done against the hair growth. Only then can you do clean lines and controlled lines. That's only possible for feathering when going against the growth of the hair. So, getting back to the strand. We put product on the strand and spread it up toward the skin. If you see you have less product by the roots, then your lightning will be less where there was less product. The quantity of product should be approximately same at the root and in the middle of the strand. We will do feathering at the bottom too. The internal strands will have less product, but it should look like about the same amount of product. I am doing feathering on the bottom. If I need, tilt the client's head slightly. I do product application in the middle of the strand. It's the same thing, but here it's not as important as on the top. I do feathering from the middle toward the skin. Next, I take tablet board and put it at the ends and do this. I spread the product on the ends. No need to fold or comb. The tablet board must slide off the strand. It's not enough for it to just keep it under. And I do a lot of movement with the brush along the growth of the hair to make sure that the product goes in really well. If you have a thin strand of hair on the thinner side, you can do these wavy motions. A closed technique. If you are not sure that the hair is well covered by the product, you can do these aggressive movements. You can move the top layer off to the side and add product. Then again, sliding off the tablet board, and so you keep going. Now you're ready. Finally, you need to feather it up on the surface. Which will take a couple of seconds. This way you combine the entire length of the hair. When the strand is ready, only then you are ready to put it on paper or foil. You should not do the coloring or the feathering on that paper or foil, or worse, on your hand. Only the tablet board. Your strand is ready for new paper now. If you've done everything as I've instructed, slide it under the root. If you put a strand down, then it means you have it completely ready. You can't touch it. Don't try to feather or spread product near the roots once you are done. The hair shifts slightly, And if you try to do something, you will get uneven coloring spots. When you slide the tablet board off the strand, it will take a little bit of product with it at the ends. So you can add a little product at the ends only. It's very important that you take the foil or paper and put it right next to the skin. You can close the strand with these small clips. Product should not move around under the foil or paper. If foil moves because of something, or you didn't secure it, you will have poor bleaching of the hair because the heat is not the same. Parts will dry faster, and as a result, you will have uneven coloring spots. So make sure you cover the strands completely. I did this because I will still need to color the strands as they are still red. I will need to flip the strands, and this is just an insurance policy. I don't always use clips. So how do you determine paper or foil? It doesn't have any effect on the quality and the results, but the foil is just easier to shape. And at the slightest movement of the client, you run the risk that the foil is wrinkled, which can result in uneven coverage and coloring inside. Paper is thicker, foil is more dangerous. But if you are careful and nothing is deformed, you can use either one. Again, going back to the diagram in a previous video, you remember that the middle of the back of the head, we always have a minimum number of layers. Blowing there is more difficult. Lines are more visible if we do something wrong. That's where we do layers. And let me show you a trick. First, we do a graduated layered cut the way you're used to doing it, with scissors or pointing technique. Then, it's pretty easy and simple. You pull a strand from which you want to blow out. Turn it towards you a little to see it better. And with scissors in the middle, get a few more layers from the middle. This way, the blowout will be better. You will do it below your grip line. This will not damage hair, especially when hair is thicker. But you are depriving hair at the end of density, and that's very bad. I try not to do it all. This may influence the quality of the haircut. It will get tangly. The ends will look bad because they are thin. I prefer the ends not to look like they are chopped off. So I don't prefer that technique, but it works. Let's keep going. We'll take the hair between two phalanges of our fingers. Important clarification. Keep your fingers straight. If you curl them, you will have uneven parts of the strand. Some thicker, some thinner. We have no control that way, so straight fingers. Stretch out the strand perpendicular to the scalp. Put the blow dryer by the roots and blow out near the roots. Then, at an angle, blow the hair along the length of the hair, away from the roots. Finish all the way to the ends. Go back to the roots, and finish cleanly with the nozzle parallel to the hair. This is a clean blowout. If the hair is not blowing out, but they are straight, then you need to take a smaller strand. I take the product. The brush should always be clean. I put it on the strand in the middle. I feather it up toward the roots, as close as possible. I will tell you all about the nuances, corrections, and touch-ups later. I lift up the strand and do the same thing on the bottom part. Look at the layer. If the layer is uneven, you need to add product like this and level it out. When you do zigzag and when working with thin hair, I will tell you more about that later. If you see power inside the strand, it is unacceptable, and this is what you should do about it. We put the table board under the middle of the strand, not the ends as before. With a clean brush, you take a minimum amount of product and apply it to the middle, leveling it out. Then, with an upward motion, you push it up. Then you won't have a problem. Getting back to the ends. The tablet board is sliding the product, is spreading as evenly as possible. I hope you understand what I mean here. You will see it when you're working on this. If you see problems, you take your tablet board and you work it out. Not from the root, but lower, from the feathering area down. Don't pull the product down. Spread it down, and then polish back up. Your tablet board is your foundation. Now, I am feeling that I got it all through. Don't brush and don't separate the strand. The blow will be a little worse here. So we have to make sure we get the product all the way in. But the area of feathering should not be aggressively touched. Seems like we have it all saturated now. Putting paper under now. If we need to, just the ends, with the brush a little. Cover it with another piece of paper. Important. Don't clip the hair too much, or you may have a line there. Just very lightly. We talked about some important things that might be difficult for some. One thing we didn't touch on is building effect. How do we build effect in Handy? The grip for widening we discussed, but we didn't touch on where to blow from. If you're in Handy, this has to do with an average number of layers or less. With many layers, hair can be flexible. In AirTouch, you can hold the strand in different spots, and you will have different levels of blowout. In Handy, it's not the same. In Handy, you can only hold in the middle or lower part of the strand. The same rule applies. Really, the bottom half of the strand. Only then will your blow work. The lower you hold your fingers, the less the blonde. The closer you hold the strand to the roots, the more blonde. Remember that the amount of hair you blow out has an impact on your result. It's also stupid just to hold always the very tips of the hair, because you're giving up control of your results. When in fact, you can and should have a way of managing the effect of the blowout. That would mean that you don't understand what you are building, and you should always think it through and give something unique and interesting to the client. A few important things. Not so positive, but important. First, the product you apply should be renewed every 15 to 20 minutes as it loses its qualities. It changes consistency, becomes more watery and less potent, less effective. So change it every 15 to 20 minutes and it will be more comfortable for you to work with. Second, feathering along the roots. Different bases, we can do feathering differently. If we are working with hair of 6-tone depth or lighter, we can feather 10 centimeters from the roots, and it will be fine. If we do it right, and we don't take too much or too little of the product on the hair. If the base is level 6 thin, or medium thickness or lighter, then you can do feathering 10 centimeters from the root and it will be fine. But if you are working with thick hair, level 6 or darker, then feathering must be done much closer to the root. You will be pretty close to the root. At the last 3 centimeters next to the root, you will feather it out. So, minimal feathering. It won't become yellow because of the warmth of the skin, and it gets lighter, okay? If you take thick hair, or darker than level 6, then it will be getting warm and will darken. The feathering area will not be as quick, as light, as the rest of the strand. Let's illustrate. We take the strand. This is a view from the top. If the base is level 6 or above, thinner hair, we can take 10 centimeters And we won't have a yellow line if you put the right amount and it's evenly layers on the hair. If we are working with level 6, but thick or dark hair, we have a minimum 3 to 5 centimeters of hair to work with for feathering. It's best to think of it as a 3 centimeter. That means you have to take the whole strand and color it, leaving only a couple of centimeters by the root for feathering, because this type of hair will get yellow if we allow wider feathering. And you will have to stretch out the roots. With so little feathering of such dark hair, how do we be sure there's no yellow? Because this part will be fed by the warmth from the scalp and the bleaching will work okay. This is if you don't want to just color the roots. Because if you do, you can make longer feathering. Let it get yellow. You will stretch the roots later with color. But if you want to work with longer hair, and you're getting yellow by the roots, what's the problem? You will have the length of 10 centimeters along the roots. Let's say you have a level 9 by the roots, which is best to go by. Take 8 and 9, and you will get 8.5, and the whole length will be clean. We are just talking about the different options that are available. If you don't want to color the roots, then learn to work with the thickness of the strand. Pick the right depth of tone and feathering distance, as well as a percent that you are working with. If you are getting yellow, you can stretch the color to the roots when coloring the hair. In the last few years, I'm hoping everyone already learned how to do that so that there should not be any problems. Now let's get to the zigzag. High zigzag is very cool. It lets us do smooth effects because hair is so intermixed and the mistakes are not easily seen. Tight zigzag looks like this from the top. Classic zigzag is below. It's more stretched. Which one of these is right? Both are right. The stretched out one will give you the effect of more lines. Closer zigzag will give thinner lines. It will look more neat. How do we draw zigzag and penetrate the strand? First, what is zigzag in terms of strand thickness? If the strand is 5 centimeters, and we do zigzag, then it will not penetrate the strand through. It will only penetrate about 80%. So you see, there is room not penetrated by the zigzag. If you penetrate through, you will have a lot of relief, which some people like, and it's perfectly fine. It's not correct to go through the whole strand. You should do it slightly less. So how do I learn to do zigzag the easiest way? It helped everyone. With this technique, you can do it cleanly, correctly, and on any hair type. I will draw this and then show it. You take the comb with a metal tip. It must be metal. If it's not, it won't work, as they are thicker and you won't get the precise zigzag. You take the comb and hold it like a pin. You put it perpendicular to the scalp, and you go up and down. How does it work? You see, up and down motion is fast. Side to side is much slower. If you go to the left, you have a soft zigzag like this. I suggest you practice on paper first, not on hair. Practice going up and down in one spot first. When you see that it's working, then you can move from one side to the other. Do it with the tip of the comb, quick, up and down motion, and not so fast moving to the side. We are stretch out the strand.
Gangsters all across the world, still hitting them corners and them lolos, girl. Still taking my time to perfect the beat, and I still got love for the streets. It's the DRE for them gangsters all across the world, still hitting them corners and them lolos, girl. Still taking my time to perfect.
Мы стоим напротив пряди,
We pull it up a little bit with a lot of tension.
но без сильного натяжения.
We hold the comb towards the roots,
Корням
and we put it towards the roots,
держим как ручку в руках. И
perpendicular.
головы делаем часто,
We hold it like a pen in our fingers.
но влево перемещаемся
On the skin, we draw the zigzags.
вниз.
Lots of quick up and down moves, and to the left we move very slowly. Just like this, we do the zigzag.
Примерно вот такой частоты зигзаг можно его сделать.
Right on the skin. It will look like this. You can do them more or less wide.
Как делаются пропуски? Вы приподнимаете прядь и снизу
There are no strict rules.
зигзагом, частым зигзагом, мелким.
How do we do skips?
От общей густоты пряди.
We lift the strand,
Нельзя пропускать
and from under there, with wide zigzags, we grab up to 30% of the whole thickness of the strand. We can't break the strand in half because then you have a stripe effect. Zigzag will blend out the skip and the rest of the strand, but it will give it more definition. Skips are done to save time, to give a more natural effect. You will not be able to correct it later. So this is only for girls with natural hair that are ready not to color hair for a long time after. They are looking for a light effect. I would not want you to save time like that. If you break the strand in half, you will get stripes. What does 30% mean? If the thickness of the strand is 1 centimeter, then you skip 1/3 of a centimeter. Else you will get a stripe look. Skipping gives contrast to the ends. You should know that the whole effect will be seen when you do AirTouch or Handy. Ends will always look lighter. Skipping will make it look darker. So you get more contrast. Application in Handy you can do in 2 ways, and you know them. With your hands or your brush. The idea is the same, just different tools that you choose. Some people think that Handtouch is only doing the application by hand, but it's not true. It doesn't matter. In fact, it doesn't matter as it's the combination of 2 techniques. Why do I sometimes recommend working with hands and sometimes with a brush? You must from time to time wipe your hands. It takes a little bit of time, but still. With our hands, we feel the penetration better through the strand. It's easier for us. If you are working with thick hair and thick strands, where it's difficult to feel the penetration with a brush, then work with your hands. If you feel the level of penetration with your brush, and you've reached that level, then work with a brush. I only work with my hands when I have thick hair, but I have colleagues that always do hands, no matter the hair type. How do we work with our hands? I blow out the strand. the same as we discussed before. As before, the blow dryer before the layer, first by the roots, and then moving towards the ends. If you go to the layer before its blown layer, you will have a blown stripe. A stripe that's not blown, and then again a blown stripe. You will have a wave, which will just tangle the hair. This is the angle. We go along the growth of the hair, not against it. Blow under all the way to the roots. When done, you can turn the nozzle and clean it up. This is our perfectly awesome blowout. As I said before, top zone will have more blowout because there are more layers. The middle zone will blow less well. As here, we have a cascade cut, and this is okay. It's actually right that way. Lower and middle zones in the back of the head will have more blonde, as there is less blowout. And top, you can do less blonde. And overall, you will have a good balance. But if you have a cascade cut, and you have lower and middle sections less blonde, because you blew out more on the top, then you will have darker on the bottom and lighter on the top. This will be uneven, and not a very good quality look. Now we do this. Put product on the middle of the strand, a little higher, with the brush and then my hands. I spread it on the whole strand down to be sure it penetrates. I need a little more product as I don't have enough for feathering. I add a little more product to penetrate it all. Adding more product with 2 fingers, I will lift the product a little up toward the root. I have seen people do it with the whole hand. Now that's not how it's done, just 2 fingers. This way, we have a good feel for the penetration of the strand. The ends do well also. Don't make a lot of unnecessary movements, as oftentimes this is the case. You don't need to put the product and pull it down 1,000 times. Need to stop when it's done. My strand seems penetrated. Just to be sure, I do it 2 to 3 times. That way, I don't have to deal with it later. Do the same thing on top and bottom. Wipe my hands, got the paper, put it under. Simple. Then, if I continue to work with my hands, I would wipe it with a towel. I put a little on the ends and cover it. That's it. I can't say it's faster, but it's about the same. Now, I have to show you the horseshoe zone. When we go to the top part, we have this triangle that's getting narrower. You can run into the fact that the strands are very narrow. You can simplify your way a little by combining the strands down, going all the way down. As you know, in salons, we don't work by first all the left side and then all the right side. I show that in my classes to show more quickly the application process. Usually, we go from one side to the other. So if you can, Combine the back of the head zone and control the amount of hair blown out. How many motions we do with our hands? I often notice that during application or feathering. Reminder, we do application down, feathering up along the hair. I work like this. These are my motions. You guys are often doing it like this, working in one spot, beating the product. Your motions are not wide like mine, but short and small. That's wrong, because even though it doesn't necessarily impact the quality of your work, you for sure have to make 10 times more movements with your hands. And that impacts the speed of your work. If you are doing small motions, it's taking a long time. There is no point. Large motions, adding product if we need to. Next, to the roots or the whole strand. Again, about feathering. Remember that we take about 10 to 12 centimeters from the root, and that's what we use for feathering. Make sure penetration is from that level down. From there, up is much lighter toward the root. If you're doing it 5 centimeters, it would be dirty and it would not work. Unless you are doing short feathering, and you're doing 5 to 7 centimeters from the root when you start with the product and go down. And with the brush, do feathering up a little at the 5 centimeters from the root with a clean brush. That's how it works when we work with the dark base.
Крошка, принцесса пала, ночь перемен, мысли растамана, пока не устав, музыка играла, кто-то курил, кого-то впирала. Дура, дури, мара, она мана была, думал, улетала в теплые края, летом море, песок.
Before I do the last strand in the back of the head, I will pull out the strand perpendicularly up. I must do that at the same angle. I must blow it out and apply at the same angle. If I don't, then I will have a dirty blowout and application at the root will not work. If it's not comfortable for you, tilt the head of the client a little and it becomes easier. It becomes a horizontal line. I wanted to add 2 things. Foil. If you work with foil, it's not a problem. In master classes, we always work with foil. As there seems to be shortages of paper, make sure that you don't fold the foil in half. You can't hold it up, paper or foil, or you will have a line. Let the strands flow down. You can cover the foil a little on the sides for a better hold, but not harsh folds. No clips at the roots, so there are lines. How do we warm up the strands? Especially if you're not sure if we put enough product to the root area or if you're in a hurry. It's simple. With the warm air, we can warm up the foil or the paper, but not the skin of the scalp. That's wrong. Here we are doing it at this root. We have the blow dryer looking over the paper or down, making sure we don't heat up the skin of the head. So root area we do with an upward motion. Blow dryer looking up the length of the hair. Blow dryer looking down at this angle. And you shouldn't have any problems. And now, a little about hair cutting. You probably know now, that if you're working with a cascade cut, lots of layers, with that thickness of the strands, you have zero control over the effect of how it will look. It will look uneven and spotty. This is the back of the head again. As you remember, we break it into 3 sections: lower, middle, and top sections of the back of the head zone. So, with the cascade cut, this is what we have: shorter hair on top, and from the middle section down, longer hair. When you have a cascade haircut to work with, I recommend this. In sections 1 and 2, so lower and middle, do more blonde, and actually blonde on top. If you have a very layer cascade, I recommend you take strands less than 3.5 centimeters. It can be 3 or 2.5. Then it will look more even. Again, the thickness of the strand, 2.5 to 3.5 centimeters. With that, 1 and 2 zone blowout should be less than in 3 zone. Then it will look even. And it's to avoid high definition. If you are doing definition, if you're doing zigzag, do it finely. Don't do it stretched out. It can look unpredictable on a cascade cut. How do you renew hand? There are no specific moves, as in AirTouch, like blowing out 10 times up and down. Here, we don't use it. Actually, in AirTouch, if you watch my video, you will know why we rarely use that. You probably know how to correct hand. It's very simple. Like any other technique, like teasing up hair. You blow out the hair, and then you have an obvious line. The new growth, your feathering part, and your colored part. So for the newly grown out hair, you take higher oxidant, middle section, lower oxidant, and at the ends, if it needs so, lower. Or you don't do anything to them. This is classic. You blow out the hair, and you see this grown out new hair section. So for the top part, you take high oxidant. You take a 10 for the middle part. If it wasn't covered by anything, then you don't need to do anything. All you need to do is just put higher percent on the transition feathered part. Different oxidants, no problems, very simple. When you put the strands back, it should all work out fine, covering any mistakes you may have made before in feathering. And the renewal will be great. The area of the sides of the head, we go this way, diagonally, all the way to the part in the middle. I will show you on this top strand. All of us have a lot of broken hairs around our faces. It may be even the idea of a hairstyle someone wears. They are more subject to our touching and therefore break more. This is where we get short hair around the face appears. When you blow them out, even if you take the strand at this angle, slightly diagonal, the little hairs by the face stick out. If you ignore them and just work with the strand, you will have this mini strand by the face that's not colored. Of course, that's unacceptable. How do we work with the short hair by the face? No matter if it's part of the cut or naturally there, you blow out the strand and the short hair, is left out. You pull it up and connect it to the main strand. And you hold it at the end of the mini strand and blow it out again. Then you don't have this hole. The line is more massive. You put the product at that spot, and then you go down lower on the strand. So that you don't have too much blonde, or you can do air touch with a maximum blowout. Sure, you remember it from my videos, where I talk about the difference between highlights and air touch, as in the bangs example. Next, we'll work with the root area. Here, I have two life hacks for you. First one is that you can stretch the strand toward the face. Blow it out at this angle to get the following. When you pull the strand toward the face in the opposite direction, when the strand gets in its place, you get the shorter hair here. Here, longer hair. And at the transition around the face, it's more gradual. More blonde around the face, and then less and less away as you move away from the face when pulling toward the face. The second trick looks like this. The strands on the side, at the temples zone, bangs, lower back of the head. You can blow them out in the opposite direction. The blow dryer needs to be turned, and only then do you turn it off. This way the hair doesn't get right back. Why do we blow the hair up in the edge line? Because that's how we get the opportunity to bleach the skin of the scalp, and we can do contouring. If you blow those strands down, then contouring won't work. They won't let you get close to the scalp. So if you need contouring, then blow up. All in all, I'm not going to contouring here. I will do a light blow around the face and I will get enough blonde. But there won't be contouring because there are a lot of little hairs around the face. And I didn't want that hair to look darker against the rest of the hair here if I'm going to do a lot of blonde. So I'm not doing a lot the edge, especially white, right away from the scalp. So if you're blowing the first strand up, and you get close to the roots, the following strands you don't need to blow up. You won't get any lines. It will be perfect. You won't have any problems. One up, the second one, and on. Down as usual. Short ones around the face. We grab them at the end of the short hairs and finish the blowout. If you run into hair with a lot of static, sticking out in all directions, I recommend you do the following. Try to lift the feathering zone up a little and make the motions a little smaller. That way, you won't have a bunch up there by the roots, because at the same time, the angle of the brush does matter. If you move it up like this, lifting up the hair, you will have it bunch up. The brush must beat the product into the hair. Not a lot of lifting it up and out, especially from a distance. The brush goes to the roots and only then goes away. Don't have it go in a circle. It's pretty specific here, But with time, you will learn to feel it and lift it up right. Also, if you have static problem, you can do the following. Especially if it gets very staticky in AirTouch and Handy. If you just hold the ends, you will have a lot of hair hanging out all over, and the blow won't work. So with a lot of static, hold your hair like this in front of the comb on the roots. Put the blow dryer on the hair, turn it on, and only then let your hand slide down like this. This way, you first are working with static-prone hair at the roots, and little by little the layers will go down. They won't get a chance to stick out. This is how it works. A few words about the part. When you come to the top of the head, the forehead area, put away the bangs. You can work with it at the very end. You don't need it now. How do you go to the top of the head? You start at the side and go diagonally down toward the part, almost horizontally. That's how you get to the part that everyone wears. It's quite simple. You keep going perpendicular. If the part keeps changing, it's not a problem. Just try to do this. At the top of the head, control the distance from the root so that it's even throughout, so that every strand has the same amount of blonde, so that it's even. Then, when the person flips the hair, the blonde is even and the roots are colored equal distance. Everything will look good and clean. No problem. It's very simple. I have seen some of you work like this, or have seen others do the top of the head like this in Handy, and in between highlighting the zigzag between the strands. They go like this on top of the head. You can do that, but first, if you decide to go in a zigzag like this with this thickness, keep in mind that if you get close to the roots with a lot of powder, it may look like stripes. If you are going like this, I recommend that you don't get too close to the skin and not put too much product close to the scalp. It can break down and give you lots of stripes. It's more controlled to go like this. Visually, all in all, there is no problem if you go in straight lines or in zigzag. About the amount of blonde. A rule. The more blonde you do, the closer you have to get to the root. Some like to keep that distance. But know that the transition will look more drastic if you do more than 60% blonde, which means you are blowing 40% of the blonde or less. Remember that. It's very important. As you saw here, we alternate between zigzag and straight line. I will say that it's pretty randomly chosen, just to show you the effect. You don't have to choose to work with just straight or zigzag way. It's up to you. If you want more definition, you can pick zigzag. If you want less definition and relief effect, less lines down, do straight strands. When you do zigzags, the roots and the transition area will look a little cleaner. But if you do a good job, it makes no difference. Keep that in mind. You can do one or the other on the whole head, or you could do a combination, as long as you understand why you're doing it. Now, I will finish the top of the head like this, and we'll talk about bangs. We'll also talk about getting the color through, cleaning up situations, and general work with colored hair in some complicated hair instances. One more thing. If you have a natural base here and a dark base here, that means you'll need to work with 3 oxidant. Top 6%, middle 9%, bottom 2%. And you will blend the sections between each other. Remember that the higher percent oxidant must always go into the or light base a little, where we assume lower percentage of oxidant. That's how we mix the borders in between. Remember that the higher percent oxidant must always go into the or light base a little where we assume lower percentage of occident. That's how we mix the borders in between. And so this way I have two strands. These two I will blow out and do application, and then we'll get to bangs and I will tell you everything. Top of the head, we do this. I will tell you in a sped up version. I will tell you about bangs. We'll tell you how to do the edges. Then we'll talk about hold times. You will see that a little later. After hold times, we'll talk about coloring in between strands. And there, I will tell you how we color them, when we color them, how we clean up the ends. Because you know that sometimes you have to work with black ends. That means we have to clean them up. How, when and how we color them through, and clean them up. I will tell you that later. Now, let's watch. Let's get to bangs now. We see pretty short bangs here. To do it with handy is probably not very convenient. Plus, it's done as a triangle. So here, I refer you again to the video about schematics. How to separate bangs, and when it looks like a triangle, when like a half circle. Why and how? Because bangs are short. It won't be comfortable to do it in handy, especially in the area of the corner of the triangle. We can do it all in AirTouch. The whole head you do with the hand, and the entire bangs with AirTouch. So, depending on the edge, in this case, we go like this, straight lines. If the edge line was sharp, we would alternate going like this and that. 2 strands on each side, 4 in total, at this angle. At this point, just turn around and the end bangs this way. Now, we'll just go all the way back, since we have a straight line. If I was doing it in handy, how would I do it in Handtouch? I would take the first strand and make it pretty thin. I would do it in classic balayage, or classic hand, but without blowout. These strands following, I would also choose to make pretty thin, maybe 2 centimeters each, 2.5 maximum. I would just blow it out about 30% maximum, and would just do hand. That's it. But for me, it's just not very convenient on this length. First, without a blowout, from 2 sides, as close as possible to the root. Feather out 10 centimeters from the root. The majority of the hair length I color. Let's say that 1/3 by the roots I feather out, and the rest I make sure are completely penetrated. How do we combine hand usually? Temple, sides, back of the head, behind the ears. Bangs do with AirTouch, the rest with the hand. That's how you can get enough blonde, and as a whole, it's pretty fast. Very cool. And handy, you can do 30% blonde, 40, 50, 60, 80, 90% blonde. Hand has no limits. Now, I will finish bangs in AirTouch. How will I do it in the area of bangs? I need to have the same level of blonde in bangs as in the top of the head and all top areas. So, I am going to have quite a bit of blowout in AirTouch. After the application, we need to have a hold time of 30 to 40 minutes in this case. And then we color in between the strands. And then, after hold times, I will tell you when and why we color in between strands. I will show you how we do it, how we clean up the lightened strands, clean up dark ends. I will tell you these things. And how to leave total blonde, I will tell you. Let's go. Now, it's time to talk about coloring through. Notice that we see a blown out orange hair. Why do we do color through, and when? If I have redirecting of a color tint, which means, under here, I have copper, and for lightening, I have a nice background color. But I want to do ash color. That means this blowout and these strands must go from copper to ash. And for that, we color through the direction. Redirection, actually. Something like this. If you have the direction, the general color trend suits you. Like, you like warm tone and that's what you got. You don't need to do any color through. It's only needed if you have redirection. But even if I have warm, blown out strands, I will color them through. Because blown out strands, when they go back to their place, they will ruin the effect I created earlier. That means the effect won't be realized in full, not what I wanted. So, not to confuse you. Natural hair, we don't color through. If the direction is fine, and there is no need to redirect, then we don't color through. Now, we do the color through this blown out hair. When do we color it? Copper like that can be countered with ammonia color. Don't do it without an ammonia. You can do it, but it will wash very fast, and all your coloring work will go to hell. That's why you can take the standard ammonia color, permanent one. What else can I say? When and how much time do we hold the color when coloring in the same color as the natural one, doing it with ammonia, with regular color on dry hair? Almost all manufacturers say about 30 minutes plus or minus 5 minutes. Almost all brands. So, 30 minutes before washing the bleached strands that are with powder, we must color these. How do we know that we have 30 minutes left before washing out strands that are with powder? We must know the specifics of working with your powder, your oxidant, generally with the product you are using, how it works in different circumstances, and how it lightens. Here is a little hint. Thicker hair will take longer to lighten than the same percent and conditions, but when the hair is thinner. How do I usually do it? On thin hair, about 7th or 8th level, I start coloring through these because I know in about 30 minutes I will need to lighten. On thicker hair, on level 8 or 9, I color through the hair because I know that in 30 minutes I will have the backdrop, and I have this hold time. That's about how it goes. Everything else will be based on your experience working with your own product and in different techniques. This is just a sample. Here, you will see how to do color through, and hold time is 30 minutes, after which we'll just do general toning. We'll apply one color to the entire length, and then you will see the result. Before the results, a small preface. Some words you must hear. I need to remind you. This video you will see will learn something new for yourself. You will be practicing, and things will more or less work well for you. But then, when something doesn't, I suggest to watch this video again. You will see something new for yourself. You will see new things, more nuanced. That's the water that will turn into something else. Watch the video again. You will see something new for yourself. And now, how we'll color through. It's best to do it with a partner, maybe someone who works along with you, or even a receptionist of the salon. You can do it yourself like this. You flip the strands over one by one, use a clip to hold them in place, and color through. This is not very convenient and safe. You will need someone to help you hold the strand, and mostly hold it in the root area. Because if you pull too hard, the paper or foil may start sliding off. Notice that and get someone to help you hold the ends and in the root area. And so you will go up like this and color through the hair you blew out in all zones, then 30 minutes of hold time. Now everything is in speed up mode. You will see it. I won't spend time in this video discussing toning, because I have a separate video on double stretching and other things. Here, in this case, we just need basic toning. Nothing special. You will see the results and in some words. Let's watch.
Still doing that shit, Andre? Oh, for sure. Yeah. Check me out. Still Dre Day, nigga. AK, nigga. Though I've grown a lot, can't keep it home a lot.
We color through with ammonia color, and the coloring is something like 612 in most brands. Nothing special is tied to it in this case, brand-wise. How exactly do I apply? I will walk you through it. You can see a close-up. I apply product to the full length, and here I have an obvious line. Here is that warm line right here. Here it's warm. Here it's natural. Where I can, I go into the natural base, but mostly I, of course, color through the warm part. This way, that's what we usually do. Going into the natural base, holding the root area of the strand, not pulling it. I remind you that I haven't told you about cleaning up after. Two options there. Now, after coloring, I will tell you. For now, keep watching. It's pretty simple here. It's better if you have an assistant. If not, help yourself with some clips.
All across the world, still hitting them corners and them lolos, girl. I'll break your neck, damn near put your face in your lap. Niggas try to be the king, but the ace is back. So if you ain't up on things, all across the world, still hitting them corners and them lolos.
What is cleanup? What is it? When and how should it be done? We work in different oxidants. When we know that the ends are light, we get oxidants lower. When we know that we have dark ends, we get oxidants higher. But very often, that's not enough. And at the near root area is perfectly lightened, and at the ends need to be cleaned up. How do we do it? I'm sure you have seen it in my separate videos about AirTouch. There are a ton of them going around on the internet and on Instagram and YouTube. Let me remind you again. Attention here. Our blown out hair, the layers we blew out, are our transitions. So we need to make those transitions not mixed together with our blonde. How do we do it? Blown out parts we take to the side, as close to the skin on the side as possible, and we pin them there in a twist. That's it. Then we can do this. Take it strand by strand and pull it off the paper with a dry towel, off the entire back of the head. That whole area I break into 2 sections, so that we don't have to do the strands individually, which would take too long. I split it into 2 parts. When I pulled that off with a towel, taking care to isolate the layers, I break the hair into 2 sections, and go with my hands along the ends, making the ends penetrated. Then I cover with paper or foil again. Then everything is cleaned up. If I need to clean up very seriously, with 2 tones, then I will split the hair into 3 to 4 sections. This way, the most important thing is to not let the blown out parts mix together. Dry towel, not a damp one. When you pull with the towel, you are not interfering with the reaction. Nothing like that happens. The hair is still breaking inside. If you are seeing that the hair is already in level 10 and not the best quality, then it's best not to pull off, but wash off. Shampoo stops the reaction. You spend more time, hair will not be combined. Yet, it will still be isolated until then. Wash the reaction with the shampoo, dry, and clean up. When to dry and when to use a towel? If you need to clean up half a tone or a full tone at the most, you can get rid of the moisture from this blonde and put on a low percentage 1 to 2. If you need to clean up a tone or more, I recommend that you not only get rid of the moisture with a towel, but dry the hair a bit. Cleaning is easier on dry hair. And then on low percentage, like 3 or 4, it's usually enough. You will continue cleaning. Of course, beforehand and later, isolating the zone. That's it. So if the blown up strands need to be colored through, they are colored through. Then you do the following. First, don't hurry up with the color through. If you see that you need to clean up, and you're planning to clean up, don't color through, but rather isolate the hair. Then pull down with the towel and finish cleaning up. And when you see you have 20 to 30 minutes before washing out the cleaned up strands, color through these blown out ones, these layers. If you at first have minimal initial cleaning, here's how we do it. You colored through everything. Then you wash it out, taking care to pull the colored strand through here and the other non-colored through one here. And you continue. So you shampoo and put the strand separate. Colored through, bleached. Isolated this way, you will have on this side all the colored through ones, so the ones with all your transitions, and those bleached, without any color, on the other side. And then you can again, now with the help of getting rid of moisture, or without full frying, you can finish cleaning up this blonde. I hope it didn't confuse you. It's a little chaotic. It's very difficult with the schedule now, but I think I said everything I wanted to. Now I will show you, so to say, Slacker's cleanup. I have already colored through, and I think in places there might be a little need to get some additional products. Then I do the following. I will just open. Here is a colored through part. I will just open the paper. I see the tone of lighting is good. Nothing needed here. So I just go with the brush for good measure, since I opened it anyway. And I close it up, and the same for every strand. If I see that somewhere the penetration is lacking, I just add a little more product. That's all. Don't clean up on super high percentages. Maximum 6 is what I recommend. This usually happens like this. The area by the roots are more difficult to additionally apply. You can't get into that puzzle, so it's better to pay a lot of attention at the beginning. So now we'll wash it all off and do a general toning with something like level 9 or 9.5. It will be a cool color. I have something not quite a super 10, but something like near a 10. In general, the 10 I will try to get to be neutral. I will take a cool base 9 or 9.5 and add something like red or purple mixed tone. I don't want to get into that. I don't want to deal with it right now. I wanted to give you the hand touch. I will do general toning, add first the full length, then the roots, all with the same mixture. We'll mix it all together, comb it out, and in 15 minutes wash it out, and you will see the results. But before the results, a preface. How to leave total blonde with the help of... It's actually not even a technique. Just thick strands. And it's a lot more faster and more effective than micro strands. Go with AirTouch. You will come to the same place, but you'll spend a lot more time. How do we do it? Here's a strand 3 to 4 centimeters thick. This strand I recommend you take out separately with a fine and high zigzag. From it, you blow out up the amount of hair you want, holding it by the ends. You do it this way. Notice this. When you are blowing out a strand that is thick, at the roots you will have mixing together of the layer and the main strand. So here you are, not able to get in with the color. You have total blonde, level 20. This part you color a natural tone of the roots that you want to see. And what's left out of 10? Let's say you do with a 9, or just clear color, or just to fill the hair. This is into natural. That means these transitions. This is a little darker. This is your blonde. This way, you color by blocks and wash out after the hold time of 30 minutes usually. Then you wash it all off by blocks. You have perfect transitions the full length, but at the roots, you have 2 to 3 centimeters that are not colored at all. And then you do the following. On the roots, the grown part out, you put the same thing as the entire length of the hair. Well, not the same thing, but the thing that brought the same result. That is, you color into the natural color of the roots. This is hair coloring. I don't want to confuse you. Color the section that was not colored before with the natural color of the roots. Then, on 3%, this freshly colored part that you just colored through, you don't wash off. You take the same formula that you had on 3%, but this time on 2% or 1.9%. And the second time around, you color the roots, combining these roots that you just colored through with the entire length. This is double stretch that you know. Those that don't know it, see the video about double stretch. That's it. I just quickly and chaotically talked about it, but I am sure you, who watched my videos before, will put it together in your mind. I think it's pretty easy to understand. Double stretch and before you create transitions. That's all. It's important to wash it out on time. Beforehand, you can put in the backdrop of lightning into the base if it has pores. Or you can do pigmentation, whatever you need. Soon, we'll see the result. I wanted to say a few words. It seems like we did everything as we should have. It seems that everything I had written down for myself, I said. Anything that would be useful for you is included in this video. I hope now you will earn very differently and you'll remember me as the man who at some point helped you with information. Those that don't have the ability to go to paid courses, or even those who came and paid for my trainings but didn't get it 100%. Come back to this video. Earn. Work out the kinks. Don't be satisfied with the result that's not fantastic and admired by other professionals and, of course, the clients. That's it. The money you will earn from this, please buy something from me for your children. Bye.